Assalam, Assalam, Latif, Al Sufyan, Louis. We open in the divine name of the Creator, Al Sufyan, according to the Al Fatiha. Mm-hmm. There's a choice to be made, and you gotta make it.
Yeah.
Can't nobody else make the choice for you. You walk for yourself, you breathe for yourself. So when it comes to the understanding of who you are, you either gonna leave it to someone else, or you're gonna get knowledge of self. And so we have been under the auspice of Black Negro color, and these are spiritual attacks. So we are under attack psychologically and spiritually, and the resulting actions is mentally, emotionally, you feel all this physically. And it's not due to knowledge of self, but it is due to these mainstream religions. These mainstream religions have made a form of spiritual wisdom popular. But the form that they dispensed to the public was altered, changed, and rearranged for the benefit of themselves, for world-class global rulership. In other words, money over spirit. And so all these things have been cohesively working together like teammates. Making sure they holding your left arm and the other side holding your right arm. And they holding it down to be pinned so you can't use what the Lord has given you. These are the grips and the shackles of mainstream religions who are part of mystery cults by great and by small. From public to occult fraternities. So in many ways, in many forms, they have created their way into knowledge of self. The foundation, which all religions are founded upon, is based on spiritual wisdom, and all spiritual wisdom is based on knowledge of self. But we don't find that when we peruse through the mainstream religions in their texts. So what we have to understand is, where did it begin? And it began with knowledge of self. Knowledge of self was something that originated from original people. Before an invader, before a calculator, before a tax was able to be collected.
Long time.
Knowledge of self being the foundation of existence as the creator of existence. And what we had in times they were called in the ancient of days. This is before pyramids was built. This is why pyramids was built. So we talking about before there was a printing press of Gutenberg. We talking about before carvings on the walls of the pyramids. We talking about standing in pure, living, self-existent before the universe was created. For you to place a book in, a pyramid in, a ground, and people to walk in. And this has been stripped and hyphenated away from its truth, and now has been conducted like Harriet Tubman to the underground railroad of the servants of demons in the name of religion. So we can't let any of these religions get by tonight and today, whenever you listening, because we as souls, we came here without one. So when we're talking about how did we become in one, then we have to ask the question, how did we become in one of these mainstream religions? From east to west, they have a religion placed on each side as a worldwide institution and a large distributor of printed text. On the east, you have the institution of the Quran. On the west, you have the institution of the Bible. And in between, you have the many dispensations coming from these branches, called denominations and sometimes sects. And so Christianity has their denominations, and in Islam they have their sects. And so in between is the many tricklings of the individualities fitting personalities. Now, the goal of these institutions was to hide knowledge of self by cloaking them inside of these institutions and by making knowledge of self available through characterization of characters belonging into the book. So we have to understand the characters that we know in mainstream religions. Let's name some. Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, Noah, Abraham, Jeremiah, Isaiah, major prophets to minor prophets. These names that we have heard, and some we have read their books of. These was predominant characters of knowledge of self, describing knowledge of self. These mainstream religions, once invading indigenous lands and receiving this storytelling around the campfire, you would say, they copy our stories, copy our characters, stuffed them in their altered versions, gave our characters in their version new meanings to now take us away from the knowledge of self to believe us of books. So now we have, when we're talking about on the east and the west, the Quran and the Bible, now we have two books that represents two sides of the riverbank. So both institutions, Christianity and Islam, both hold one text as their foundation tenet to their belief in their acts and their lawful legality. And so when we open these books, we find no author of these books. So now we have to ask the question, because we was told false prophets will go out into the world. And we know false prophets will do false things.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll know the false by their acts. And so the true divine prophets didn't set up no institution. They didn't set up a big church. They didn't set up a big mosque. They didn't make phrases such as the breath of life is now needed with the bread in the body in the church. See, these are clever, mainstream, popular ideas ideated to his believers. And since most of their believers are hard workers, meaning they don't have time to learn,
Right on.
they're not hard learners, thus they'll never know the truth of the history of what they are part of, and they gotta have, and they themselves who joined this religion is fully accountable for their own actions. So as the Indy 500 waves the checker flag when it's coming down to the wire, so is we waving the knowledge of self for you to free yourself before the day of judgment that we all must visit. And we must know and believe that these mainstream religions are in the acts of those who go astray. So back to our characters. Originally, all the characters that you would know that's in the Bible and the Quran originally belonged to the Al-Sufyan, which is the true way. The followers of all the way and the divine, which is a different truth than the messengers from institutions who are proselytizing their book, which has no author, which makes their books false prophets. This is very clever. This is very, very clever with people who are part of the elite sector of the hierarchy of the pyramid. When they are combining these thought patterns and translating these thought patterns into pages and books. So they needed us to pick up one of their books. Because now the false prophet is the book.
Come on with it.
And those who believe in the book will become prophets of the book.
Beautiful. That makes sense.
And so these prophets will have these words in their mouth. So we will know who is a part of these groups that have splintered us into division and have tried to plunder and conquer ourselves through these mainstream religions of illegal Semitic. They want you to submit to these religions by force, not by choice. Because if it was by choice, they will also offer the truth. But each of these tell you to go against each of these. So how would you discover if you are banned to read the other's book and they are banned to read your book? How are you supposed to know the truth? So this is what we have to understand right now. Knowledge of self is what has been raped from our knowing by not providing any knowledge of self, but providing knowledge of self through these characters. So now people have to step in and become your savior. When this wasn't the original understanding. There has always been one wisdom from its foundation. Anytime it has been separated and split into duality, we must know that the truth is not two. Just as your fingers and toes is filled with wands, this is how everything in life is principled and established upon. The one. And so now the main thing these mainstream religions use to conquer the self and the knowledge of self is by getting self to do something opposite than itself. And that's to worship God. This is the whole shebang right here. Share the screen a little bit. This is the whole shebang. The first clever trick that was done by mainstream religions was to insert the word God at the beginning. The mainstream religion's first trick was to place God at the beginning, something that came second, and later put that at the beginning as the first, and people will be confused from that day forward. Yep. So with that now comes later, let us create man in our image and our likeness. And he created them, he created male and female. So all this understanding is getting piped down and funneled down. And then you get into the garden. And in the garden, there's two trees. These are tricks by the devil. Remember, the truth is one. So anytime you're getting split into two, it's creating a duality for now you to be not yourself. So this how lies come in by it being two-sided. So when the liar was putting God at the beginning, when God is the second, not the first. This is why we have to understand this story that opens up called Genesis.
Yes, indeed.
The gene of Isis, or the gene of Gnosis, the genetics of Gnosis. The knowledge was being changed and transferred so you would lose the gnosis of who you are. From when you open the book and read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. From that forth, you just been swapped, self-swapped. They swapped self when they put God at the beginning. And we're going to make this even clearer. With these two trees in the garden, this is the devil's trademark. You know how evil people have their little signature trademark when they make a killing or a devilish move that they want others to know?
Yeah.
They leave a trademark.
Yeah.
See, the trademark in literature is two. This is how the devil cunningly creeps his way in, changing the one and make it into two. And now you got the people all confused.
Yeah.
See, it ain't hard to keep up with one.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the trees, there are many types of trees, but you know, I never thought about the two trees that were being placed in the garden. Were they oak or pine or what? They never, it didn't say. It cypress tree.
They named it a different tree.
Huh?
They named it the different tree.
Different tree?
Yeah, instead of like cypress and pine, they called it the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. That was their names of these two trees.
So they really ain't trees.
Right, they're really not trees.
So we using something symbolic here.
That's how the devil creeped in. He changed and altered the original and replaced a replacement.
Sure.
So there was only one tree in the garden.
Huh?
Remember, the truth is one. The creator is one. There was only one tree in the garden. See, the devil put the second tree. See, he put that tree for himself so you will eat from the low-hanging fruit.
Makes sense.
They said if the tree of knowledge and good and evil, this was the tree that was added. This was the false tree that the devil created that made the whole story from Genesis to Revelations and the reason of a savior concept to replace you as your own savior.
And one more other thing you should kind of, I was trying to figure out. It said that every tree is known by its fruit. And now here I'm reading and talking about a tree that got both good and evil on it. Now I'm wondering how that could be. But we just a thought, just kind of spin around. How you
And see, this is what they know that the workers will never know. Only the learners will. See, because you're going to run off with the story.
Yeah.
There's two trees. There was never two trees. There was always one tree. And that one tree was the tree of life. And what they was referring to is something called the inverted tree of life. This comes from the mainstream religions and all the in-betweens.
Inverted.
This is how the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil was created. Using this concept right here. I'm going to show you through many cultures how this concept was around before the Bible was around. So when they slid this concept into the Bible, this concept had to be derived from somewhere to bring it into the Bible. So now we go into where it was originally from, the inverted tree. So through this system right here, they was able to bring about a mass confusion. This is how they was able to say, turn the world upside down.
Look at that. The roots up in the top and the leaves at the bottom.
And so this concept right here is what became in the Bible the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This was symbolic to how to eat from the tree of life. Because remember in the story, they was kicked out because they wasn't supposed to, they didn't want them to eat from the tree of life.
Right.
So if you're not eating from the tree of life, then you eating from what is called the lower parts of the tree. You know how you go to a tree, to the lower part of the tree, and the shade is under the tree?
Yeah.
But the light is at the top.
Yeah.
But at the bottom is the shade and all the creeping things.
Yeah.
The many forms in life. This is what was depicted as what Adam and Eve will come into after eating from the tree. So the tree they ate from was not from the tree of life, but the tree of good and evil. So now with the tree of good and evil comes birth and death. Here comes all the dualities in life. Well, none of this existed when you had knowledge of self. So there's only one tree, the tree of life. So now we go into Isaiah. We're going to hear a familiar saying in another way. How the true and divine prophets knew. Here it go. Isaiah 45:5. I am the Lord, and there's none else. There is no God beside me. Oh, let's listen to this carefully now.
No God.
There is no God beside me. I am the Lord. There's none else. So is there a concept of two here? So now when you get into stories that are now symbolically representing a split path, this is how you know you have entered the realm of servants of demons. Because now they want you to go astray to the way. See, they want you to go away from the way.
Yeah.
So his goal is to test. Remember, he brought Jesus to test them, to tempt them. And he tempted him 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times he was tempted. What comes after 2 is 3. What comes before 3 and 2 is 1. We're going to read it one more time. Maybe it helps this time. Isaiah 45 and 5. I am the Lord. There is none else. There is no God beside me. See, this understanding right here is what has separated. So this is why when we go back to Genesis, when we said when they plotted and put God at the beginning, in the beginning, God. So now you associating God in position of the first. In your mind, in actuality, God is second to none. So now we're going to go in deeper because we got to find out who was before God. Because there's obviously I am, there's obviously the Lord, and we are familiar with these from prophets. Moses was given in response to tell the Pharaoh who sent him, I am sent me. See, these are the symbolic codes. These are the ciphers they put in. See, in the original text, the name would have been there, so we would know without a shadow of a doubt. But instead, they put a footprint instead of the actual foot. They put a print of the foot. So now you got to go find who foot it was. So we got to find the foot of the Lord, who is the I am, because they replaced the foot of the Lord with the foot of God. And this has confused the world ever since. And this has been done by mystery schools, mystery religions, and ancient mystery paths. And these things have been convoluted, contorted, and tampered with for the execution of your mind. So we know that we can't say now God is one. This is why after Isaiah, you see Jesus. Jesus don't call God God. He don't say I and God are one. This is why you got to read carefully. Because then in other texts where the devil has tampered with to get you confused, he'll say that ye are God. But that's not what Jesus actually said. That was the false prophet. Remember, the book was written by someone else. This is not the actual account from Jesus himself. This is a witness as it's coming out the gospel. These are eyewitness accounts, not autobiographies, nor is it autobiographical. So we're going to bring it back to the true teachings of what Jesus was teaching. Everyone knows, well, before we go to that part, we're going to go into Acts. If you don't know, we're going to make it known for those that was under the mainstream religion and swayed by its belief. Now, we finna bring in Acts 19 and 23. I want to see if you can catch and hear something in this verse. I want to see if a word sticks out to you. Acts 19 and 23. About that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. Let's see if we caught that. In Acts 19:23, when they are referring to the followers of Jesus, they are calling it by its name. And the name of what they are calling it is not Christianity. The name that is called by is the way. I'm going to read it again. Acts 19 and 23 states, about that time there arose a great disturbance. This is the church coming in as a bird swooping in on a fish to cause a great disturbance of the one way. So to create a disturbance is to splash the water, meaning creating two. So we got to understand this is very significant because this verse refers to a significant event in Ephesians where the early Christian movement, not Christianity, we're talking prior to any church association, prior pre-Catholic, pre-Catholicism, pre-Catholic, church is not involved whatsoever. This was known as the way. And the way was growing. And in these unjust populations, the way was creating remedy. So I just wanted us to know that this is known. And so now we're going to go straight to Jesus' teachings to also prove why these mainstream religions use such a powerful understanding to corrupt, control, and spread fear through false narratives throughout the plane of technological advancement. So these are hidden texts that most people that are just mainstream believers don't have access to, nor do they have as they have the Bible, so they have not read. So here it is to be read. This is chapter 8 and 23. And all the people were in trance and will have worshiped Jesus as a God. See, and this is what mainstream believers of Christianity has done. They has made Jesus into Jesus Christ as a deity. And this is going to just take you away from knowledge of self It's going to bring you back into birth and reincarnation, aka not everlasting life. Everlasting life means it knows no death. Everlasting life is deathless. So if you are a true believer, you believe in having everlasting life. This is why you living a certain way and not polluting yourself with sin. By sin and with sin, because you understand the tree of life, not the low-hanging fruit of the tree of good and evil. Duality. Life versus good and evil. Duality. So now Jesus had to tell him, I am your brother, man, just come to show the way. So he even acknowledged before Paul in the book of Acts or any of the apostles after Jesus Christ, before Antioch, and before Christians was known in Antioch as Christians, the followers of Jesus Christ, they call what would be called Christianity as the false way. They called it the way. Now, the way, remember, Jesus had a language. So we retranslating it into the language of the lands today, and it refers to the same thing as the direct transliteration. It's just pronounced different. The way. So the way in its proper pronunciation is all Sufyan, the one way. But what is this one way? See, this is the most powerful revelation. You see, because before Jesus, we are given from the prophets knowledge of self. And this was called Allah. Allah Sufa. And they did not want this to spread. They, meaning the church, did not want this to spread. So they created a mimicry, a mocking of the way to mock it, because they hate the oneness that everybody have from their creator. And so they want to separate this oneness into separation. So what happened was they changed the name of the All Sufyan to now Islam and Christian. Islam and Christianity. So Islam and Christianity hijacked the people by they reaching the truth before the people, before the truth reached the people. So with their crusades and their militant, this is how they was able to get introduced to it. And then they was able to come where lands haven't been touched yet, and be able to be the first to bring it there. And this is how they would cloak themselves in the name of religion. See, so this is why we got to understand, as far as in the deep south,
Mm-hmm.
that why in these books, and when you begin to open them, and they have certain sayings,
Yeah.
as he was clothed in white,
Mm-hmm.
or his garments became as white.
Yeah.
And you would think these people are followers of Jesus Christ, but they actually opposite.
Yep.
So take that for instance, the white robe that you was associate with a follower of something higher,
Mm-hmm.
take that now as the KKK.
Mm-mm.
These people was in white garments, talking about Christ, Christian. See, and this was the whole catch-22. See, this was all about the way and confusing the people on the land to truth and falsehood mix. So as they say, wolf in sheep's clothing. That's the wolf in sheep clothing. They put on the white garments, but they came to attack, kill, murder, steal, plot, revenge, and repeat in sin.
And we could bear witness to that.
See, so these was followers of Christianity that was bringing about the false prophets and the false prophecies against the way. So by the time the way reached us in knowledge and understanding, and as a theological legal doctrine, we would be so far gone into mainstream religions, we'll never know about it, never find it, never understand it, and never be revived by the holy breath that's inside of it. See, and this is why they started playing with things. Such as the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
These people that have been a part of church for 50 years say they will have the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But they committing sin. Does that go together to you?
Mm-mm.
So you can't have your cake and eat it too when it comes to sin and being guilt-free.
Right on.
If you repent, you're supposed to remain in a state of repentance.
That's right.
If you baptize, you're supposed to stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
These were symbols to say that you were sincere in your way, which was your walk and how you talk.
Yes, indeed.
And see, so the way was the most powerfulest thing that was known in ancient times, that the church, who later day became your Vatican and Roman institutions today, this is what they keep it from the people. This is what it says when it reads about the Pharisees and the Sadducees hid the key to heaven and locked the door, and those who wanted to come in, they wouldn't let in. It's talking about the pluck from this tree of life. This is what Jesus was coming to say. You drink from this
tree
and you will never be thirsty again. See, if people is really psychologically in tune with that, breathing every day to find that, loving the truth, to be honest, then these things will start being revealed. Because since the confusion have came from these mystery cults as mainstream religions, they have made our oneness into two-ness now, and many more.
And many more, right on.
So they have been playing number games with us. They've been playing number games with us. So the main question is now, who is before God? God is after the fact. There's a presence before and has always existed and never changed. This cannot die. This on the other side dies. Keep dying. But what gave that life is the life of this. See, and this is what the prophets was teaching, was the name of Allah. The divine prophets would understand what we are experiencing as a predated religious philosophy of their days by the Hindu. These people would all be in cahoots together. The Hindu sits right in between Islam and Christianity. So this is where you hear the name Buddha come in, or Confucius. And things associated within a Hindu spirit. So in that concept, everything that they have gave us, God included. So you know the plural of God included would be called Maya. What Maya is a concept in Indian philosophy. This is where they call you now Native Indians. So now when you getting the stigma labeled on you as you are an Indian, this is what they tying you to. You're not an Indian either. You are a Sufian. And this is Asiatic by its nature. So these are the people who created those teachers that was said was kicked out of the holy city.
Yeah.
These are all the false teachers that they made and created to spread their filth. So Maya is a concept in Indian philosophy that refers to the illusion of the world. So this is what they gave us. So everything that they call the American dream, that's what this is. The American dream will be a Maya for us, meaning something we never obtain, but for them, they attain it because they control the philosophy. So now, to revert that philosophy, we don't call it Maya. This is what we call Sufa. See, and the Sufa was directly from Allah. So now this is the way to Allah. This was the key that they did never want to discover. They did not want you to know the name of the way and what it's connected to. So once you see it's connected, the way is connected to Allah, Now you would know that the Bible is not the book of Allah, because it's not in it. It uses the word God. Jesus never pointed us to God.
Sure did.
He said, I and my Father, not God, are one. See, so Jesus pointed you to the Father, while these religions point you to God. Now we're going to see the significance of this. The reason why churches, institutions of such nature is pushing you to God, because to push you to the other way would be to yourself. So they don't want you to go to yourself, so they need you to go opposite of yourself, so they got God to do it. As they say, to do they bid.
Yeah.
And so this is why the divine creator for us is not a God. Our divine creator was before any God.
Yeah.
Before a God or gods. And we're going to get more to it. It's just how the highlight of oneness, how it's broken, and now how we mended it back together. Remember, they would have worshipped Jesus as a God.
Yeah.
See, we're talking about this is a lower thing. To be as a God, that's a lower thing. You see, the KKK used the word God. This is a lower thing.
Yeah.
But Jesus said, I am not a God. I am your brother man. Just come to show you the way to Allah.
Beautiful.
You shall not worship man, meaning you shall not worship God. Praise Allah, the Holy One. This is it right here. See, this is very, very key right here. Today, everybody either praising God or praising Jesus Christ, where both of those are in error.
Yeah.
Jesus, who you call the Christ, himself told you not to worship God nor man.
That's right, he did.
Now let me show you what the Sufa said. What the Sufa said. Give thanks to those. The Sufa are the teachings of Jesus, given to us by Al-Mu'id, the following incarnation of the divine prophet. So let's go. Number 9, give thanks to those who help, but never worship a man as a God. See, this is in our rule book.
Sure.
See, in our playbook, we don't worship man. In our playbook, we don't worship what come from man. In our playbook, if it's born from a woman, we don't worship it. We're talking about all those are called gods. God is a visible thing, while Allah is an invisible thing. See, one got power over all, while one is under the power of the one that has the power over all. So the one that has all in his name has the power of all. God don't have any all power. God is a single form, just God is a thought. And this is how God became the Word. So after they gave it to you as in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is how they got God as a word for you to believe in it as a thought.
Trap being set.
Well, all the law is greater than a thought, faster than a thought, unequal to a thought. Thoughts is how things manifest. So all things are a thought of a law. Did we catch that? See, all things ain't a thought of God. God is singular. God is a word. How does a word have any power? God is a word, not a name. So when we're talking about this understanding that has been polluted, called knowledge of self, KOS. This is why we don't have KOS. Because these books blotted self out. So it don't have knowledge of itself and replace self with characters. To worship as yourself, but these characters is not yourself. So this was the hardest thing for us to be able to come to grasp with.
Yeah.
We had to learn how to grip that Allah and man are one.
Yeah. And when you look at this society, they want you to worship man. They want you to, any founder of any religion, they want you to worship them, and you give honor to them before you even give honor to the divine creator. You see these people giving honor to anybody who not raised and taught them, and they don't give honor to the creator. And then you also see all that, just what they're doing. They scheming. Look at the Vatican. Look how they worship the Pope. Just to back up, and you could clearly see what everybody doing. Even you look at ball players, they'll call them a movie star. They'll call them stars, and they become their idol. They want to be like them now. So that's just to point out just how man is caught up in this curriculum of just what you just said. And religious tied up to it. If it ain't religious, it's non-religious. But it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. And just the people who never know this will never be liberated. That's the reason why they created it.
Yeah.
To entrap your soul.
That's right.
So those books are false prophets.
Mm-hmm.
And false prophets are soul traps.
Yep.
To catch liars.
Yep.
So now, if you've been a liar, you're going to run with these texts and you just going to say them.
Yep. That's correct.
But you're not going to know that you're condemning your own self.
That's right.
Because that's the knowledge of self. But that's what's missing, or say, for my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, and that knowledge is the knowledge of self. That knowledge of self we can only get in a legal form, properly now. Otherwise, it was all intuitive, coming from the eternal to the internal. But now you have a theological and legal doctrine to protect you yourself from all citizens' unduress, from all citizen molestation, for all of your rights, to why you here, to why you exist, and why you have the right to do what you doing without their authority. See, all this time you didn't know all that was connected to your text. So you can never be the shade if you was born as the sun. The sun ain't never shaded. So, but if they can convince you that the shade that the sun creates is the sun itself, that's what they did to you. If they could convince you that yourself is not Allah, then they can get you to say that now self becomes a God. Now you shall be as gods, but die as men. Where's everlasting life between that? Something's missing. So this is what the corroboration has been, to disconnect self out of the picture. And that the way that Jesus was saying to the way was self-knowledge. And that's what Jesus was teaching, as all of the prophets was teaching, self-knowledge. And that self-knowledge is who self is. And what self is the silent word of the first name that we say Allah. Allah means silence. The opposite of thought, the opposite of sound, the opposite of action, the opposite of dying. These things is self. What they needed you to do was adopt and superimpose something that did not exist for you, and make you believe that it now exists for you.
Yep.
So in actuality, self could never die, but now they have you under mysterious doctrines that now you believe self dies. This is a grave sin, y'all. That's the Jesus concept layered as a crucified God over yourself. They are superimposing beliefs over your own existence. Check this out now. In your own existence, you are an immortal being that cannot and can never die. But you have been convinced through deep belief that you can die. See, this is why this was called the knowledge of self, or the way of self-restraint. because they wasn't going to get you. You're going to restrain from all
them lies.
because you have the knowledge of self, who is, that's that silence. That's how you get within. The opposite of silence is this word. People don't know Allah because of this word called God. And God is just taking up all of their mind with silence. Because remember, I'm finna bring it on home with this saying right here. Remember, out of all that happened at the beginning, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Yeah. Well, guess what happened to God on the seventh day? God had to rest. So where did God rest? See, this is what we're talking about here. This ain't never been explained.
Yeah. Did you rest in heaven?
So now when we're talking about if God came first, he could not rest. Only things that came after returns back to rest. Those things in motion come to rest, not rest. That's already in rest comes to rest. Those that are in motion, I'm going to and fro, walking up and down.
Yeah, that's time to get a little rest.
This is called motion. So the opposite of rest is creation. So on the 6 days of creation, after the 6th day, after it was good, God rested on the 7th. So now we're talking about the understanding now that what God was, it returned to something that was before it. Rest was before God, because God had to return back to it after the result of these actions. And this is where God is at to today. But you didn't know what it all means. You taking it as external values, when this is called knowledge of self. So God rested. That God rest is the silence. God rested, meaning God went back to Allah. The silence, the rest, the 7th. This is why 7 is significant, because of the silence on the 7th. This is why that's considered a holy day, when you rest from all thy works, all thy motion. Now, this is what's called, where things grow up and say meditation. See, so the divine creator is resting in the divine paradise, eating from the tree of life. This is what is called immortality. Remember, God had to come to an end because it had to rest. But we don't understand the power of how things that come out of rest, let's replace rest with you coming out of sleep. You coming out of sleep is what gives you the power to be. Yeah. That would be like God coming back out of rest to now have the 6 days of creation. So things is told you one day to the divine creator is 1,000 days to God. See, so we're talking about two different realms here. One is fully visible. Touch it, taste it, see it, feel it, smell it. But it's going to die because it's not the divine creator. So now, when self is associated with God, which self should never be associated with God. Self is only Allah alone. See, so that's very different. So this is what we have to understand. That rest is the name of the divine creator, our Fatiha. Allah be thy name, holy be thy name. That hallowed, that's rest, silence, holy, sacred. And it's like sleep, but it's not sleep. Self is not sleep. Self don't sleep. So it's not sleep, but it's like sleep in the sense of how everything's shut off from this world. But you still alive. This is what the knowledge is to get you to the eternal existence where there's no more having to sleep and awake. This is down here on the good and evil plane, what we call the body and the soul. So up top will be the spirit, and the two is the soul and the flesh. And these two came from the one spirit. The one spirit is the self who is Allah, which is a silent word. To say his name, you would say his names. So now when we are talking about, this is the difference of why you never worship a man as a god, because that's a visible thing. The self who is Allah is pure, without thought, without motion, without attributes. For these things are from the objects of knowledge, not from knowledge itself. So this was a clever understanding to bring us either to the side of the lie or to the one truth. So that I am the Lord, as we revisit, that I am the Lord and there's none else. That word Lord is self. The word I am is the word all Allah, Allah, Allah. I am. I am the self. Allah, the self. And there's none else. There's no God beside me. Me is referring to self. See, that was a commandment. Worship no other, for I am the Lord. Worship no other gods but me. It's talking about your own self. Your own self is the divine creator. Your own self is not the flesh. Your flesh would be called God body or the soul body. And this knowledge of self was wanted to be hidden from us for so long. For so long, these knowledges have been hidden. So they have planted deceptions on the path for you to get lost in time and long periods of time. And see, so Jesus only worship all Sufyan, the way of the silence. I brought on last session about the wisdom of Allah, which was the silence, and that silence cannot be circumscribed, that it can't be hidden. It don't matter where you at. It always exists. In silent meditation, Jesus sat beside a flowing spring. That's called worshiping Allah. Jesus always worshiped Allah. Allah alone. Another word for Sufyan is Fatiha. Fatiha. So when you read of Jesus, of saying statements like I and my Father are one, these are ciphers of mystery religions compromising the knowledge of self. And for you to not have knowledge of self, they give you knowledge of not self. And so now you have God replacing Father. Where Father is a part of the Sufyan. As you see, the word Father is the word Fati. The word Father is the word Fati. So Fati is what he was explaining when he said I being all Allah, and my Father would be the Fatiha. And if you understand through your own studies that the Father and the Fatiha are one, then you will find the All Sufyan. This is the esoteric codes that was placed in ciphers to corrupt the knowledge of self, to bring in new evolutions of gods, aliens, and demons. So the reason why these mystery religions and these mainstream popular versions of religions exist is because they represent the worship of lesser gods, demons, and jinns. Opposite of demons, jinns, and gods is I in the Fatiha. So this is what Jesus is pointing to in the phrase, I and my Father are one. Your goal is to be Allah, because this is what he became. So, in reference, here's a hidden scripture about Jesus. But Jesus said no more. In one short breath, he told the story of his mission to the sons of men, and then he disappeared. The Magi said, some time ago we read this promise, now fulfilled upon the dial plate of heaven. And then we saw this man who has just demonstrated unto us the power of self. Man means self, not God. The Son of Man is the son of self. The son of Adam is the son of something visible. Always, Allah will be invisible. This is the nature of the self. The self is Allah. Remember that word I'm saying is really silent. The A represents silence in front of the law. Reason why it's not just law is because that's the sound you make to block out evil, seeing evil, hearing evil, and speaking evil. When you put the A as a prefix in front of the law, it means opposite of, without, away from. So now you're going into silence, meditation, rest. Not sleep. There's a difference between rest and sleep. Remember, God rested, but Adam was put to sleep, meaning visible. Rest ain't visible. That's invisibility. Rest is invincibility. So we supposed to do what was demonstrated unto us, which was the power of self to raise from the cardinal flesh and blood to flesh of Allah, Aha. That's the one, the silent one. This is what we call the divine. Love divine. Love truth. See, this is what we came to do. Become Sufians of Allah. So remember that Allah is silence and Allah is silent. Silent is the true creator. No sound, no thought, no word, no deed is the true creator. For self, if self and Allah were not the same, you could not know who you are. You would have to be another. And this is what they cleverly persuaded you through deep belief to convince your soul as a psyche to believe that thought. He is the visible man of today. But everyone on earth shall overcome. I overcame and be like Allah. Be like him, a Sufyan of Allah. This was the overall hidden message for all true believers. That belief of believing in everlasting life was to believe in self. That self is everlasting life. And that belief was the way. That self was the way. Like the saying where old go was, if there's a will, there's a way. Now you can add on to the glory of your magnificent, wise progenitors. If there's a self, there's a way. And this was have been crippling. The belief in the wrong direction. Some people believe through these mystery texts, because they don't point to self, they point to something mysterious that you don't know about. Some believe they are the body, which self could never be a body. It pre-existed before all bodies. It's the distributor of all bodies. It's the creator of all bodies. So it cannot be different and be the same. When it says, and the word was God, and in the same was the beginning, the same is the self. Self always remains the same. It never changed. Only time it changes through modification of text, making you believe something about yourself which is not true. Such as self can die. Self can never die. You just don't remember. But this is what these texts have done. Some believe that the soul can die. See, they say they not the body. They say they the soul, but then they say the soul can die. Look how clever the demon is. Then it says you can blaspheme the soul and the body, but don't blaspheme the Holy Spirit. And if you don't know what a body and a soul is, you definitely don't know what a Holy Spirit is. So many people are guilty because they don't know what any of these things mean, but they believe these books that are the false prophets. You have to actually be there to know that person was speaking. If they actually said that. If I write something down on a piece of paper and give it to you and say that came from you 1,000 years ago, how do you know that's true? See, this is the power of thought. That it can build up empires, or it can bring you right to your own death. Ourself is the life. Ourself is the heaven. Ourself is Allah. I the self is the one. That Isaiah said so beautifully. He said that there's none. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we covered all that. There you go. I am the Lord. I self, Lord. See, all this is Asiatic. See, don't worry about anybody that's non-Asiatic. They don't think this way. They don't got the DNA. They don't got the gene to know. The Genesis, the gene to know. We talk about a specific knowledge of self that is older than the sun, older than the moon, older than the stars, and all of them in heaven. So you know it's older than anything below. Older than the flesh, older than bones, older than organs, older than speech, older than voice, older than the head on top of the body, older than the soul. We talking about this, what we have been deprived of by thinking we workers, when the scriptures was to help you to become knowers. You were supposed to stop working, pick up the scriptures to become learners, and then learners, you'll know when it's time that you done with learning because you become a knower. Show you my brother picture right here, the knower. There you go right there. That's the picture of the knower, y'all.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The knower. The 7 eyes of Allah. This was a knowing man, not a thinking man.
Right on.
See, there's a difference between thinking and knowing. Thinking, it might not just be clear.
That's right.
Knowing is crystal clear.
Crystal clear.
And so they gave you the believing scriptures instead of the knowing scriptures. So you come out a knower, and that's what a true believer is, instead of a believer and believing in everything but self.
Yeah.
So one ends into slavery automatically.
Yep.
See, we are supposed to dump the cardinal flesh and blood and pick up the flesh of Allah. This is what has been hidden from us through Christianity, through Islam, not giving us any true meaning of what God is, what Allah is. And clearly said today, Allah is self. And God is everything visible. So now we have to understand, do you worship ignorance or do you worship wisdom? This eternal play will keep going on. This is what they call the Maya, but we call Sufa. To see a form is to see a Sufa. To see an image is to see a Sufa. Sufa is like breath. You got the in breath and you got the out breath. They're not the same. So the in breath is life, the out breath is you leaving life. So these two is always in the same direction. The in will always be in and the out will always be out. They don't mix or flow in or never collide. So when we talking about these understandings that need to pass through for your flesh to be transmuted into flesh divine, this is how you light up. This is how you light up right here. Happy is the Musalon, for if good befalls him, he praises and thanks all Allah. And if misfortune, praises God and bears it patiently. See, this is what we are speaking on. Two differences that we have to really, really understand. One is connected to fortune. One is connected to misfortune. When we go into the black community, the most used word to call on for help is God. We don't understand God yet. People who are in misfortune calls on God. You've been collectively, for generations, from parents to children, collectively been calling on God, and your situation ain't got any better. You may be even a year later poor. You might be even in more misfortune. Like you don't have any rights to your own. Someone else has the original. This is big here. All the people that's worshiping God and somehow is experiencing misfortune. And this was designed by the demon himself. He got you to worship misfortune, suffering, pain, all the negativities. He got you to worship that. In the beginning, God remember my opening when he placed God at the beginning. This is what changed everything and confused the soul and the mind from that forth on. because God is never was first. Misfortune didn't never come before fortune. You can't experience misfortune unless you don't know the divine creator. If you think God is the divine creator, you are sadly mistaken, and you have been tricked and deceived by these mystery mainstream religions. See, but you can still be happy on both sides once you have the knowledge of self. I'm going to bring it right here on 45 out of our sacred Sufa. He who knows his own self knows Allah. Now, did that statement compare self to God, or did it compare self to Allah? And as you can see, it's not to God. So there's a big, big difference to why God is not equated to the self. Only Allah alone is equated to the self. Our next life. He who knows his own self knows the divine creator. Self, again, is the likeness of the divine creator, not God. Now, if you read the Old Testament, God don't know what to do. To make man or destroy. What we are saying is that these are characters. God is a visible character that is physical. Everything that is physical came from something non-physical. Everything that is non-physical is invisible. Anything that is invisible, you have to know the knowledge of the unseen. Because yourself, when you look down, is not flesh. When you look down, that is your flesh, not yourself. You can see your God, but you can't see yourself. Yourself is invisible. How are you going to see something invisible? This is why you indivisible right now. So you can get a full knowledge of self. That you pure like space. When you go outside today, look at space, and that's how pure self is. That's who you are. Pure space, pure as air, pure as breath. And you can manifest like water. These are the beautiful gifts given to us. These, number 7, these are the gifts that Allah, what is self connected to? Self is connected to, self is Allah, therefore connected to all that, the likeness of Allah. So Allah and self are one. These are the gifts that Allah has given to you. Two gifts. Remember, it was 2 rewards for those who seek knowledge. So you have 2 gifts. See, so they turn this 2 into a duality, like this good versus evil, spirit versus flesh, when these are really 2 gifts given to you by your own self, so you can get to know self. And these 2 gifts are your flesh and your mind.
Who can deny that? No one. Look in the mirror. See one, can't see the other.
And these are the things we need to know and believe with the flesh and the mind. That the only reason why flesh can move around is because spirit joined it. And so life flows, but not the flesh. It's moving based on the life inside. Called the spirit, the breath.
Beautiful.
The breath joins the flesh and life flows. This is what you need to know about the flesh. That your flesh shall corrupt. Your flesh shall decay. But your mind is immortal. See, these are 2 gifts. This is why it's important to understand your flesh. That our flesh is an illusion.
Hold on up in that place.
It's a maya. It's an illusion. So the real deal would be your mind.
Yep.
If 2 gifts was given to you, your flesh as one gift and your mind as another gift, if the flesh decays and is an illusion, we know what illusion means, right? Not real, not who you are, not self. Then what is giving you the lightness in the mind?
That's why we have so much lust, because now the illusion of the flesh, and now that explains why there's so much lust going on, because now you ain't using the mind right, but wrongfully. And now the Lord self done got you all caught up in all them activities. And that's what we get caught up in, whether it's ball, basketball, baseball, football, the love game. It's all y'all, all ball.
This is why the good comes with the bad come with the good. This is why everybody's responsible for having children. Because if you ain't learned this yourself, why are you having children? Because now you want a slave. In other words, you want what the Bible and the Quran produces, slaves. Because if one ain't learning that these are gifts not to be used by others, but by self. And your time is limited, not because self died, it's because flesh dies. All flesh dies. All that is born must die. See, but your mind has been separated from the flesh. Your mind is not the flesh. But it's only certain gifted creatures to know the mind of Allah. See, those are the higher minds. Those the one that will live on immortality. For they have overcame. For they have became the knower. This is why the non-knower seeks to confuse the mind. See, because that's where all of it begins. Once your mind confused, now you become a prey. You weak. You can be followed around. The most important cleanliness in our salon is the heart and mind. Therefore, do all acts with a clean heart, a clean mind, and a clean body.
Look at that. All acts.
All acts.
It didn't say flesh with a clean. It didn't say that.
All right, these things, you're going to always be cleaning the flesh. I've been cleaning ever since I got here. So what we talking about, do you know how the soul cleans?
Yeah.
Do you know how to inner cleanse? You know how to cleanse the body with water, but do you know how to cleanse the soul?
Yeah. Good point.
See, people,
Good point.
you got to know what tools to use, what instruments.
Yeah.
So now we talking about, and we didn't get to bring that in, but our last one. As it is written in the way of the Al-Sufyan As-Salam, which is the same as it is in heaven. We are not the flesh, because the flesh dies. But the thing that lives with the self is our mind. Our mind never dies because the mind is not flesh. But our mind lives on into the next world with self.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Man.
Close our divine meeting. As-Salam. As-Salam. Latif Al-Sufyan Movie. All Wadu.